Welcome to Thursday Checkdown. I got to tell you, you may notice my attire is a little different and my background because I'm in North Carolina visiting my daughter and son-in-law, and I packed the hat. I didn't pack the shirt. So uh, anyway, we're here to try to help you win your leagues and mainly just to have fun. We're going to have fun tonight. We've got some great guests tonight. We're going to apologize in advance. Our typical AI specialist has opted out tonight because he had some things he had to take care of, but he did provide us with the information. So we will do our AI segment and we will get Tipp's feedback on that. But, starting tonight, Rick, you know this guy. Our pro tonight is none other than Mason Mace Riney. Also known as Cali King 49er17, which he told me what that was for once. I understand he's a 49er fan, but I don't remember the 17. Is that a player's number you like?
That's the year I got out of the service. So
okay.
I actually made this account the year before I got out of the service, and I was like, one day when I do sports, this will be really cool. But I was around. I was in Italy, Louisiana, different places around the world. So
but you're a California guy. You can't be cool. It's just not possible.
Oh, we know. We invented it, man.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, Mace, tell our audience what you're up to. See, even the audience is laughing about it. What you're up to and where they can find your work.
Yeah, so I write for Buckswire. It's an extension of USA Today. You can find me on Twitter at CaliKing49er17. I also do articles mostly for the sports affiliation. So find me on there as well.
Are we going to get you as a permanent podcast host next year?
I really hope so. Looks like the tea leaves are kind of down there. Crystal ball showing that. So
okay. Now, I got to warn you, the Joe you're going up against is actually a pro.
I noticed that in the pre-show prep. I was seeing that he's actually probably more of a pro than I am. So,
well, Mr. Chris Rito is an old friend of mine. Chris and I go back to the 90s playing fantasy football against each other. We were in the original Fanex together. We got started in the rec.sport.football.fantasy news groups, and that was before there were Football Guys forums, and for a long time he was with Fantasy Mastermind and a good friend Mike Nasser. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Really well. Thanks for the invite to be here, Greg, and all you guys. Yeah, I am still with Fantasy Football Mastermind right now. Been with them for most of his 30-year existence. Did some freelancing for some other sites before then, but basically I've just been an avid fantasy football player and commissioner for about 35 years, which I'm guessing is about as long as Mace has been alive. So
yeah,
exactly.
How many years did you actually because I know TC was our commish most of the time, but how many years did you commish the preeminent Experts League in fantasy? It was the first Experts League in fantasy football. There were labor and two wars for baseball, but there was nothing for football when we started Fanex. How many years did you commish that?
Actually, close to 20. I actually commissioned it a lot longer than TC did. He started and was the commissioner for a long time, and then I took over, and then I stepped aside when he came back to the league, and I've been running it for the last 15 years straight after that. So probably more than half of its existence, I was a commissioner.
Yeah, but you let it die last year.
Well, I have a lot of irons in the fire outside of here. I'm getting ready I was retiring as well, and I just said one of you guys has got to step up and take over, and I just couldn't do it anymore. I had commissioning of all my local leagues and my actual family life. I'd like to see them every now and then, so it seemed like the right call to make.
Will you always be one of my favorites? And wearing the Lions shirt tonight when the Lions are playing a must-win game against the Cowboys, thank you very much for that. I do appreciate that, Chris. So anyway, what this segment is about is that I have always maintained that the top players don't have to get paid to be good. Pros get paid. Joes don't get paid, but they may know as much as anybody else. Okay. And right now, I got to go look at it because I think our Joes are ahead of our pros. No, yes, our Joes are ahead 9-7 on the pros. So what we do is we take the top 12 quarterbacks and tight ends and the top 24 running backs and wide receivers. And we ask our guests to choose one of, doesn't matter which position, one player that's on the list and one player that's not on the list. Not on the list is a sleeper for that week. On the list is a bust for that week. What they're saying is they don't think that the player they choose will finish in the top 12 or top 24, depending on position. And the player that was outside the list will finish in it this year. And just so you know, because I did mention that the Joes are ahead of the pros 9-7, that's a total of 16. Our host, Mr. Brusuelas, and myself, and in the games we missed, we brought in other hosts to help us. But we lead 26-16. We're destroying the pros and the Joes. So what we want to do is we want to start with our pro. So Mace, you can go first, and we start with sleepers. So Mace, tell me, who's your sleeper, buddy, and why is he your sleeper?
Yeah, so my sleeper of the week is Chris Godwin Jr. He's a wide receiver, number 32 on Fantasy Pros. They play the Saints this week. His fantasy totals are still low, but he's coming back from injury. He has under 14 fantasy points in the season, but he's pretty much pointing up. Mike Evans is supposed to come back this week. Not sure if he's going to be utilized more as a decoy. He was limited the past 2 days. So I think with the drop pass last week in the end zone for Godwin, I think he's going to try to get back. It could come down to a battle of who gets the touchdown between him and Ibuka. But I think Chris Godwin, for the opportunity that he has and for the cost and how low he's ranked, I think he's a sweep.
And the good news is that Baker had a full practice today.
That as well, yeah. The AC joint's looking better. He learned how to slide last week, so.
That's a good thing. All right, well, let's switch over to Chris, our Joe. Who is your sleeper and why?
Yeah, I thought I'd go take a little bit of a risk. You don't want to hear me rehash the same things as everyone else. So I'm going to go with Jordan Mason of the Vikings. I know the Vikings have been scuffling and the offense has been pretty disastrous, but I'm leaning into a backup running back technically on an erratic offense because the Vikings have been getting chewed up on time of possession, and there's no better way to keep the ball in your hands and out of J.J. McCarthy's hands, essentially, therefore out of the opposing defense's hands, than to run the ball 30-ish times. Aaron Jones obviously has that shoulder injury, potentially at least limiting his usage or his durability this weekend, if not potentially his status, although I think he'll play. I just like the chance of Mason getting the lion's share of the backfield touches, probably finding pay dirt. I think he's a low-cost DFS option, a potential waiver wire find if he was let go. And when I look back at what he had done in weeks 3 to 7 when Aaron Jones was out, Mason carried the load. He was a very serviceable RB2 and a low-end 1 in some scoring systems, maybe a little lower in PPR. Did this with 2 or 3 offensive linemen out of the lineup, so he was really running better than his numbers indicate. He's averaged 4.7 for the season and carries, found the end zone 5 times in limited action, 4 of those in his 4 games as the lead back. Commanders are also generally a fantasy goldmine to opposing running backs this year. Been the 4th most generous, both PPR and non-PPR. Over the last 5 weeks, they've been the 2nd most friendly, allowed 700 total yards and 6 touchdowns in 4 games to running backs. If Jones is limited, re-injured, or possibly even doesn't suit up, I think Mason's got high-end RB2 potential at a minimum.
Yeah, and Jones has been limited in practice all week, too, so that's not bad. Rick, who do you have?
Well, I went a little bit deeper, and I went for Darren Waller, Miami Dolphin tight end. He's going against the Jets, and that's always a good thing, although the Jets aren't that particularly bad. But then he's a great hold for the rest of the next couple of games because he gets the Steelers and the Bengals. So he's going to be a pretty good tight end streamer through the next couple of games. In his first game back from his injury, he had a 68.9% route share, 13% target share, and had 47 receiving yards. But if you go back to pre-injury, he had 16.2, 16.3, and 8.2 half PPR points. He should be the Dolphins. He should be too as number 3 target after Waddle and A-Chain, and he's going to give you some red zone usage. I go with Waller.
I like that call. Waller's a great player, and he's only going to get better as the season goes on and he gets over the injury. I went deep, okay, but you might not think it's deep. The wide receiver I chose is actually ranked 62nd on the year. But I expect the Green Bay Packers to shut down the Chicago Bears. And I'm going with wide receiver Christian Watson. Now, it's true that he's wide receiver 62 year-to-date scoring, all right? But he climbs to wide receiver 27 in points per game because he missed time too. He'd still be eligible. We only look at year-to-date scoring to keep things simple, but even if we looked at average, he'd still be outside the top 24. But the Bears 9-3, they really have beaten a couple really good teams, but I don't know. It's hard to deny Green Bay's 15-4 against the Bears since 2000 in Lambeau, and they're playing in Lambeau. So, I expect a Pack win. Why Watson? His last 3 games have shown steady target progression. He started with 5, went to 7, and then last week he got 10 targets. All right, against my Lions. Okay, he is a deep threat, and he scored in 2 of his last 3 games, 3 touchdowns total, because he scored 2 in one of them. Now, that is a weakness of the Bears' defense, is the deep ball, and that's what he plays. So, for me, I think Watson is the one offensive player that tears the Bears up. I think Jacobs could struggle a little bit. I think Dobbs could struggle a little bit, but I expect Watson to get in the end zone and get deep at least twice. Now we're going over to our bust, the guys that are on those lists that we don't think will be on them for next week. Back to you, Mace. Who's your bust?
Yeah, my bust of the week, I'm going to keep it in Tampa Bay. The other wide receiver kind of spoke from a little bit of Mika Ibuka against the Saints. So he's the wide receiver 13 ranked consensus on Fantasy Pros at the moment. And since pretty much week 5, he's been dead to rights except for like a 17.5 and a half PPR. I think we're in like week 10 or week 11. He has a catch rate of just 52% and a drop rate near 12%, 35% catch rate. The last time he played New Orleans, he did get targets, but he just turned them into 3 catches for 35 yards. So I don't know. If Mike Evans were to come back this week, I still wouldn't really be on the dip with Ibuka. I think maybe one more week with Evans in rotation, and then Ibuka is going to go ahead and see more. I guess he's going to keep his targets for anywhere from like 6 to 9 a game probably, but I think they're going to be going for more as we see Evans and then McMillan as well come back into the lineup.
And Godwin. I mean,
yeah.
So he was my pick last week, and he paid off. If you look at his top, we do PPR, we don't do half PPR. So if you look at his scoring over the last 6 weeks, I think since week 4, he's only had one top 24 finish. He's been really bad. Yeah. How about you, Chris?
I'm going to say Michael Pittman, a bit of a contrarian play. A lot of people have him ranked pretty high this week because of the Jags' overall pass defense not being very good. But he's disappeared over the last month with Alec Pierce rising. He's only got 8 catches for 59 yards his last 3 games. Hasn't had a game over 30 yards in a month. Josh Downs has taken over being the favorite target on the clutch third down situations. So I think they're going to feed JT early and often this week to try to, protect themselves a little bit. I just don't think the volume is going to be there to sustain that very high ranking for Pittman, even in a decently heavy bye week. And like I said, the Jags statistically have been a bit of an anomaly for opposing wide receivers. They have allowed amongst the lowest yard per catch in the league to wide receiver, but they've generally been more generous to the deep threat guy, which seems kind of counterintuitive. Their overall low ranking in pass defense comes from allowing receptions to the tight end and the running back far more than to the wide receiver. They've actually been pretty good against the wide receiver. My bigger concern is they've only allowed 2 receiving touchdowns to wide receivers this year, and most of Pittman's fantasy value has come from his career-high 7 touchdowns through 12 games so far. So a reduced target share, reduced chance of finding pay dirt. I'm reluctant to have him as anything more than a number 3 guy for my team, let alone in the top 15 or 20. He's certainly going to fall short of that ranking, even if he finds the end zone. My only reticence here is that Pittman has owned the Jags in his career, but this year has looked very different for him. And I think there's just more options in Indy that there ever has been before in his tenure with the Colts.
Excellent call. Rick, your turn.
Well, I stole one from the great Snap, Crackle, and Pop show. It was one of the smart guys on that show, listed off just about every Chicago Bears player. I picked out DeAndre Swift, the Bears running back. Part of the reason is that they're going up against a really tough defense on Lambeau Field, and only one back, Rico Dowdell, has had more than 15 points at Lambeau Field, and he had 25 for 130, 2 touchdowns. But other than him, you look at Jahmyr Gibbs, he had 19 yards on 9 carries, had 31 yards with 10 catches, so he got a lot of PPR points for all those catches. But Saquon Barkley was 22 for 60, Chase Brown 9 for 42. See, they've kept all those better running backs in check. I'm not expecting Swift to have a good game at all. He had a good game last week, but it was a better matchup, better game situation. Before that, the 2 games before that, he failed to score more than 9 points. So I'd fade Swift against the back.
Okay, well, for me, I'm also stealing from that Kellogg guy that's on Snap, Crackle, and Pop. And this one hurts. This one really hurts because wide receiver 22, Keenan Allen, is a personal favorite of mine. I've explained. I got to interview that kid when he came out and was drafted. Before he was drafted, his agent was JT Johnson, and JT gave me several of his players to interview. Internet guy, fantasy guy, not really a journalist. And I got to interview Keenan Allen as part of my show. And he plays well. So he's a favorite of mine. Anyway, this week he faces a pretty decent Eagles defense. It's not great, but it's not bad. It's middle of the pack, okay? But he's got a decent floor because he's getting 5 or 6 targets in each of his last 5 games, all right? But he's only averaged 9.4 fantasy points per game in those games. So he's only had one top 24 performance since week 4. So this is a guy that he's just not getting it done as a top 24, which is what we're shooting for. Could he be a flex play? Absolutely. Okay, he could be a flex play. His quarterback got a broken bone and had surgery. And not only did he have surgery, they not only put pins in, they put a plate in his left hand. We don't know how that's going to impact Herbert. We don't even know if Herbert's going to play this week at this point. He did not practice on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. I did not hear if he practiced today. He may have been limited, I think, today. No, he wasn't. He was at Wednesday's walkthrough, but he was limited at the walkthrough. And that was Monday Night Football. He's got an extra day. But I just don't trust Keenan in that situation. Plus, it's a crowded receiver room. It really is. So that's it for Snap, Crackle, and Pop. Iggy, first, you guys, both Chris and Mace, if you want to stick around, you can. We'll be doing an AI segment at the bottom of the hour, and then we'll do a mailbag, and I'd love to have you guys answer mailbag questions. Those are good. But we're going to take you off screen, and I do want to thank you for participating here. Iggy, take us to the news set.
Hey, and before we get into the actual news of the day, wanted to also remind folks that it's week 14, 4 teams on bye: Patriots, Giants, 49ers, and Panthers. So their stars should not be in your lineup. So let's get into the injuries. And we mentioned Justin Herbert already.
Cannot win with him.
And he has a broken bone in his left or non-throwing hand. His backup is Trey Lance, who was in for only 1 pass for 9 yards. But they play the Philadelphia Eagles on Monday Night Football. He does have an extra recovery day, but it also means that if you are banking on Herbert to play and he doesn't play, you have to have some emergency backup like a Trey Lance. So it makes it for a tough decision. Aaron Rodgers also has a fractured wrist on his non-throwing hand or non-throwing side. He also had a gash on his nose during the last game. His backup is Mason Rudolph, who didn't look good either. There's some talk in Pittsburgh about handing this over to the rookie quarterback, Will Howard. So stay tuned for who bubbles up to be the starter in that game.
Another Buckeye, right?
Another Buckeye. Aldo, didn't Will Howard go to Notre Dame?
Oh, I thought he went to Ohio State. Maybe he did go to Notre Dame.
Yeah,
that's a step above. That's a step above Ohio State.
Yeah. So Aaron Jones, Minnesota Vikings running back, has a shoulder injury, but it's not considered serious. If he is out, and I think Jordan Mason came up as one of the sleepers. He was 6 for 47 last week. Xavier Scott would be the primary backup to Mason if Jones is not in. Dylan Sampson had a calf injury. He's considered day-to-day. Quentin Judkins is the starter and the bell cow for the Browns. If for whatever reason Sampson isn't able to play, Jerome Ford would be the handcuff. Bam Knight, he had a possible knee injury after rushing for 62 yards and totaling 98 offensive yards total. Watch for practice reports. Bam Knight certainly would be the best running back that Arizona has. If Trey Benson doesn't return, and that's the other bit of news, is that folks are looking to see if Trey Benson is able to come back and play for the first time.
You don't think he'll be back this week, do you?
I don't think so. I think that they'll probably want to have him go through a full week of practices and then.
So is that Michael Carter thing going to play?
Michael Carter's the remaining running back there. And after a little bit of success early on the season, he petered out. So the best advice would be to avoid the Arizona Cardinals backfield and look more to their passing attack, which has been a strength of the team.
Let me ask you about the Chargers. O'Marion Hampton is back in practice, but he's limited. Is this another good day for Kamani Vidal, or do we temper what we expect from Vidal because Hampton's coming back?
I still think that Hampton, they'll probably want to see him go through a week of practice before putting him out on the field. I would still lean Vidal, although, again, they're playing who are they playing? They're playing, I see the Rams.
So much easier when they were San Diego.
Oh, they're playing the Eagles. So, I would probably not lean towards them as a running team, although the Eagles have been able to run on. But
wait a minute. Chicago just put up like 5,000 yards on the Eagles last week. I mean, seriously, their two starting running backs got over 200 yards. Both of them went over 100 yards.
And, I mean, the Chicago Bears played well. I mean, again, you got me. I'll let you list off the wide receiver for the Detroit Lions because we just got some late breaking news on that.
He will play.
News on
Amon-Ra will play, which surprised me. Now, I would not. If he's playing, he's in your lineup because they won't put him out there and risk further injury. But they need to win this game. And so if he can go, he's going. Now, I think the bigger question in this game is, does Jameson get 8 to 12 targets? And what is the role for Isaac Tesla?
And I just rushed out to add Kennedy.
I don't know.
And I'm kind of worried that was probably a wasted free agent pick because I don't get kick return yards in my league. But
Well, I have Tom Kennedy starting for me because he's going to be returning kicks and punts for Detroit in this game against Dallas. And,
yeah,
Dallas can score points. That's a lot of kickoff returns. And when you average 25 yards per kickoff return, if you get 4, you got 100 yards.
Marvin Harrison, Arizona Cardinal wide receiver, had a heel injury. And that was just coming back from missing a couple of games because of an appendectomy. And so if Harrison is going to miss more time, you've got Michael Wilson, who was really doing well the last couple of weeks. Greg Dortch would be another possibility. Trey McBride is their number 1 receiver in Arizona. So, I wouldn't go much deeper than Greg Dortch. Parker Washington, Jacksonville Jaguar wide receiver, suffered a hip injury. More focus is on Brian Thomas Jr., though. Will he get a ramp on work? Will Tim Patrick will replace Washington, and Jacoby Myers has been ramping up his work as wide receiver 1 for the.
I like him this week. I do. But you skipped 2 quarterback items that are in the news. Number 1, Jaden Daniels put in a full practice and will probably start this week against the Vikings. And his opponent is going to be J.J. McCarthy because he cleared concussion protocol. So he will start. Could that turn into a shootout?
Other returning players, Mike Evans returned to practice. And Deshaun Watson, Cleveland Browns quarterback, returned to practice.
But he's not expected to play this week.
No, in fact, probably won't play the rest of the season. But we were talking about returning players.
Yeah.
Then after that, a couple of lesser names, Xavier Restrepo, Tennessee wide receiver. He was carted off the field with an ankle injury. Minimal impact because, one, the Titans just aren't very good, but you've got Alec Iomanner, you got DK, you got Van Jefferson. They're the wide receivers in Tennessee. You're not starting any of them. You got
wait a minute. Chimmer DK, if you get return yardage, is worth the start as a wide receiver 3 or flex play. He does get enough points combined to actually be a valid player.
Sure, in deep leagues.
12-team league with 2 wide receivers and 2 flex. He's going to get you about 10 to 12 points because of his return yards.
Yeah, if your league also gets you the return yards.
Well, if it doesn't, it should.
Yeah. Well, I'll jump to IDP since I like IDP. Jalen Reed, Houston Texans safeties out with the forearm injury. Joey Bosa managed to get all the way to week 14 without suffering injury. He's out. Buffalo Bills edge rusher with a hamstring. Sauce Gardner, Indianapolis Colts cornerback with a calf strain. Patrick Queen, the Pittsburgh Steelers linebacker, hip injury. Nick Martin, San Francisco 49er rookie linebacker with a concussion. And I'll just list off a few of the offensive.
Wait a minute, who's the all-pro tackle for the Eagles? Defensive tackle.
Oh, Jalen Carter?
Yeah. Was he put on IR? Because he disappeared.
Yeah, he was put on IR just today. You're right. I missed that.
I didn't know. I didn't know because he didn't. It was like he wasn't even on the field against the Bears, my point.
Yeah. And so offensive line injuries, and these are important, obviously, for if your fantasy team is using running backs or possibly
quarterbacks or wide receivers or tight ends. Yeah.
Yeah. So Jack Conklin, Cleveland Brown, offensive tackle out with a concussion. Walker Little, Jacksonville Jaguars, offensive lineman with a concussion. Ryan Kelly, Minnesota Vikings center out with a hip flexor. I think they lost a couple of offensive linemen last week too.
Yes, they did. They had 3 guys that were starters that missed time last week.
And Andrew Bradford, the Seattle Seahawks guard, is out with an elbow injury. And with that, that is the news for the week.
So it's time to do AI. Iggy. Did Iggy... Okay, so the AI segment, Iggy, if our guests are still around, bring them on up because they can see too. But our AI segment, basically what we do is Tip goes out, we compare 3 players, a tight end, a wide receiver, and a running back that are all within 10 points for the year of each other. And we say, who's going to score the most points this week? All right. And we ask 2 AIs, Sir Whittington, which is basically the Google AI, and Mr. Krog, which is basically Grok. And I got to tell you, the scoring has been really bad for Krog. He scored 36 points. Now, the more points you get, the worse you've done because you get a point for every spot you're off on your prediction. So the best you can score is 0. If you get all 3 right, you scored 0. You don't have to predict how much you're going to score or anything like that. Just who's going to score the most, the next most, and the least most. All right? And usually you get either 0, 2, or 4. Okay? That's just the way it goes. All right? And leading the pack is Moa and Tip and Sir Whittington. Okay? Now, in fairness, I missed 2 weeks where I wasn't there, so I didn't get any points for those 2 weeks. That's why I'm low. All right. Rick has 30, which is not bad. It's actually second place or fourth place since there's 3 tied for first. But he missed last week, so he didn't get any points last week. So we both have had a couple of misses. But
I would have been right on all 3 of mine last week. So
okay. That said, the hosts are sitting at 60, and that's with our replacements, by the way. And AI is sitting at 62. Thank you, Krog. We appreciate you letting us lead the way. So this week we went with what Rick finally liked. He doesn't like my picks of players usually. He thinks they're obvious, but clearly they're not obvious because we don't ever get them right, very rarely. This week, Kyle Monangai, 108.8 points at Green Bay Packers. Wide receiver Alec Pierce, 113.9 points for the year at Jacksonville. And tight end Kyle Pitts, 116.1 points versus Seattle. All right, so I've got to do tips section. So Kyle Pitts is Sir Whittington's first pick. He's coming off 8 targets, 7 catches, and he draws soft matchup versus Seahawks against tight ends, apparently. His week-to-week usage is volatile, and Atlanta's offense isn't suddenly turning him into 2018 Kelsey. All right? They went Alec Pierce second, 3 games of 70-plus yards his last 4, and a bottom third Jaguars secondary that's vulnerable through the air. His upcoming schedule tightens significantly, so his current production may be a short-lived treat. So think about that. And he goes Kyle Monangai last, fresh off a 130-yard, 1 TD explosion and earning meaningful work even in a committee. But it's a tough matchup with the Packers. And DeAndre Swift is still siphoning touches, although we don't know if DeAndre's playing this week. He's nursing an injury. All right. Krog went with Monangai first. See, the AIs don't agree. They often don't agree, which you can tell by the scoring, too, by the way. 5 games of 10-plus PPR of his last 7, owns 50% of the red zone touches, and faces a beatable Packers run defense. Now, see, I don't think they're that beatable, to be honest. Minimal receiving involvement, and a TD to pin a profile is a negative for him when Swift plays. So he went Alec Pierce second as well, averaging 20.9 yards per reception with three top 24 finishes and a juicy matchup versus Jags secretary that bleeds explosive plays. Only 4 to 5 targets per game means volatility. A 2 for 28 line is always in the range of outcomes. And he goes, Kyle Pitts next. Why you might start him again, coming off an 8 for 82 performance and sees a massive target share when Drake London is out, and London should still be out this week. Why you'll regret it, production collapses when London plays, and he hasn't scored since week 4. Volatility remains the default setting. All right, Tip went with Alec Pierce first. He says Jags given up 18.4 points to wide receivers for middle of the pack fantasy things. So, but they can be had. And against the AFC South opponents this season, Pierce is averaging 71 receiving yards. Can he get in the end zone? Well, in week 13 against stingy secondary of the Texans, he got 78 in the score. If he mimics those same numbers, he's a must start for you here. He went Pitts second. Good matchup against Seattle, who is allowing third most receptions to tight ends this season at 82. Last week, Pitts had 7 for 82 again. Great shot to duplicate his week 13 performance. One of the problems is Drake London could spoil. It's always possible London comes back. I think at this point, we don't expect him to play this week. So that was the negative. And he goes Kyle Monangai third, dealing with an injury. Doesn't help, even though he was limited today with an ankle injury. So he did practice, but he was limited. One of the toughest matchups against running backs, however, in Green Bay. So Krog said that Green Bay was a beatable matchup, and Tip and I think they're pretty tough, actually. Packers have given up 3 rushing touchdowns on the season at Lambeau. So at home, they're pretty tough, all right? And Mungangai's touchdown streak comes to an end in week 14, according to Tip. All right, Rick, you're next.
Okay. Well, I'm agreeing with my friend Tip. I'm going with Alec Pierce first of the 3. He ranks 13th by PFF receiving grade with receivers with 55 or more targets. He's a lot of advanced stats, 13th in yards per route run and 20th in passer rating when targeted. But the more important stats I like to look at is his last 3 games. He was 4 for 78 with the touchdown, 1 for 26 with no touchdowns, and 4 for 84 with a touchdown. Jacksonville is 18th against running wide receivers, giving up 19 fantasy points per game. But I think more important to me is that the Colts are going to be really coming out playing hard against the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Colts were embarrassed by my Houston Texans, and I think they're going to be really pushing hard in this battle for first place in the South. Kyle Pitts is my number 2. Seems like we have Kyle Pitts every week, so I don't know if it's just we're big fans of the tight end generational talent.
Actually, after the top 12 tight ends, there's just not that many to choose from that are worthwhile.
Makes sense. He led the team in receiving in the 27-24 loss to the Jets, securing 7 of his 8 targets for 82 yards. All those were team highs. He, more important, has been Kirk Cousins' favorite receiving option, averaging 7 targets in each of the 3 contests that Cousins has started. He's going against a Seattle defense that is a tough defense overall, but they're actually one of the more generous defenses in terms of allowing fantasy points to opposing tight ends. And Drake London, I don't expect to be back. I think that will push more targets towards Pitts. So I put him number 2 of this group. Last, Kyle Monangai. Again, we talked about injuries, but he's also going against a really tough Packer defense in Green Bay. And he doesn't offer much in the way of passing or receiving. I think that, again, that's Swift's area. They're the 6th toughest defense against running backs, giving up only 13.5 points, fantasy points per game to running backs, and only 86 yards per game and a half of a touchdown per game. So if Chicago falls behind early, which I do expect, Monangai is probably going to be right now.
All right, we're going to go over to Mace. Mace, you have 2 minutes. Give us your 3. Give us the order and just bullet points why.
Okay, so just because I don't like tight ends, I like Pitt's matchup this week. I think Kirk Cousins, actually earlier today, I'm in a league very, very desperate. I'm on the fringe of the playoffs. I'm scrouting the waiver wire because I have Kirk Cousins as my only quarterback because I only drafted Michael Penix. And I see Geno Smith. And after about 2 minutes of looking it over, Kirk Cousins was my best option, I think, in that situation. So I like Pitts' matchup and everything he's got going there. I think he's consensus rank 6 tight end on Fantasy Pros right now. But I'm going to go with Alec Pierce just for that upside, man. He's done some dirty work in the end zone. He really stretches the field. Daniel Jones really needs help. And, I mean, honestly, he needs to help himself, right? But someone needs to lead this team. He's really stepping up. Like you said, Downs is getting the bulk of the targets. But I don't know. I haven't really watched, like, a ton of Colts offense. But when I do, I feel like Downs is kind of like dropping the ball. Not like a Donnie Mitchell style, but just literally just dropping the ball. So I think the more they go to Pierce, the more upside they have. So I like the bigger play there. I already talked about Pitts. He gets it. He's just like O.J. Howard reincarnated, more athletic, just can't do it. I don't know what's going on there. So Monangai, I think he's on the injury report. So I don't know, just between him and Swift, and then like you guys were talking about earlier, Greg, the Packers defense, they're not exactly the easiest front 7 to run against. If Quay Walker's good to go, then that's probably going to be a no-go, and they're going to make Caleb pass the ball, which is kind of weird because over at USC, behind me, this way, that's kind of where Caleb thrives. So I'm really excited to see how that offense ticks, kind of on a side note. So I'm going to go Pierce, Pitts, and then Menard.
Your turn, Chris. What do you got? 2 minutes. Oh, are you muted?
Yes.
Talk. There you go.
Sorry, I was muted. My fault. My bad. I like the order that both Rick and Mace mentioned there. I do like Pierce, Pitts, Monangai in that order. For all the reasons I mentioned, we talked about Michael Pittman being my bust. I just think that the nature of what Jacksonville allows favors Pierce more this week in that passing game. I think they are going to get a couple of deep shots. And again, I think they're going to ride the running game, which makes play action. It makes deep shots better and more effective. I don't think they're going to have those little dink and dunks to Josh Downs and Pittman. Pierce, you give some great stats, Rick, about the yards per route run and the passer rating when targeting. The passer rating when targeting for a deep threat being that high is astounding. That's really quite amazing. So I do like Pitt's matchup. I think Drake London will be out. I agree. So I think he's in line, especially in PPRs, to have a very solid game. Since he hasn't scored in what seems like an eternity, I doubt that he's going to get in the end zone again. So it's middle of the road. Monangai is obviously a red zone target. I think he's doing well. They're going to ride the hot hand. They're both gimpy. Regardless of what Green Bay's defense looks like, whether it's good, whether it's bad, whether AI's right, whether AI's wrong, the thing is here, the game script might really take the running game out of it. I mean, they ran the ball a million times last week. They both ran for like 125 yards. I just don't see them getting that many rushing carries because I think Green Bay is going to put the hurting on them and force them to pass the ball, or at least not to run the ball as much as they would like. And that reduced volume and maybe reduced red zone opportunities makes a very touchdown-dependent guy from Monangai my least palatable of these 3 options.
All right, I have 16 seconds for me, so I'm going to go real quick. I agreed with what you just heard from the last 3 people. I'm going with Pierce first, Pitts second, and Monangai third for all the reasons stated. I don't need to add anything except Iggy. Take us to the mailbag, buddy. Now that was weird because my browser came blank and said, your browser refused to play the video. Now, when I play it back, I'm going to see that video and know that it played. But Rick, is there anything in the chat? Any questions in the chat? We'll start.
Yeah, I saw a question. It looks like he's, let's see, Bob Hope, coming back from the roadshow. We've got, it looks like 2 tight ends and 3 wide receivers. I don't think he's, choosing between all 5.
I'll go first, and then I'll let you guys expand on what I said.
So Pitts versus Strange.
Strange first, and then I really like Myers this week. So if you only need 1 wide receiver and 1 tight end, I'm going Strange and Myers. Let's go to Mace first.
Yeah, I'll go Pitts and then Sutton.
Okay, why?
I don't know. Just picking Strange and Myers, aren't they on the same team? So I think I kind of want the upside. I think Pitts is going to get more. Kirk Cousins might keep it closer to home. And then I just said that Ibuka is kind of my down guy. And I don't know. I just don't really trust Myers yet on that offense. I feel like they have a lot of volatile options that they can use. They're looking for their back-end guys for next year with Brian Thomas Jr. and then Travis Hunter on IR. So I don't know. Sutton's just a wide receiver 1. I think he's been waiting to pop. Bo Nix doesn't always have to use him. Maybe he has to this week.
Rick, what do you say?
Yeah, definitely Strange. In fact, I just picked him up in an important league. The question about wide receiver is interesting, and I actually like the idea of Sutton. He's been pushed to the kind of like the sidelines with both Franklin and then this last week, the rookie wide receiver.
Right.
Yeah, but I think maybe this is a time where Sutton pops up and is going to be a primary target. So I'd go Sutton, Myers, and last Ibuka.
Okay, and Chris.
Yeah, I love Strange this week. I mean, the Colts cannot stop the tight end, and he's looked great. He's been essentially a primary passing target since coming back, and even before he was injured. I definitely love Strange. I actually started him over Jake Ferguson in the league this week. I'm really high on Strange, so that's a no-brainer. And I kind of agree with Rick. I like Sutton. I think even though he's a secondary option a little bit for this team right now, he is such a red zone threat. And with this matchup, I think he's a real good chance. I'd say better than 50-50 chance of finding pay dirt this week, which really elevates him over the other 2, which I can't see scoring.
Okay, so basically, Ibuka got his big name by scoring, but he just hasn't done it lately. And Myers is since he's gone to Jacksonville, he's getting the targets. He's being used. So I like Myers over Sutton because Sutton's been seeing a decrease in opportunities where Myers is seeing an increase. So we're not much help. We're all over the place on the but I think Rick said Myers first and then Sutton, right?
No, I said I actually liked Sutton
over Myers. Okay.
Yeah.
And then Ibuka last, though, right?
One other quick question that was from the injury report. Looks like Wendy Early, our friend,
yeah,
is asking if Patrick Queen was good.
He's an IDP play. Who cares?
Hey.
I know Mace. Just so you know, TSA is putting together. An IDP invitational that's going to have some of the biggest IDP players in the world in it. And they asked me to play, and I said, I'll play, but I don't know squat about IDP. So I hired Mace Riney as my defensive coordinator. So Mace, I know Mace was going to complain, but Rick is also in that league. And he does.
I'll try. He was limited in practice. Actually, there's been more attention on Peyton Wilson, though. And so I'm kind of thinking that Peyton Wilson, if he doesn't play, Peyton Wilson's going to have a day. And I see Mace shaking his head yes. So I might not be too far off.
So is Queen going to play or not? That's the question.
Well, he was limited. Like I said, he's limited. And so in practice, that's probably a good sign. I thought he wasn't going to be playing this week. So the fact he even got into practice would suggest he is going to play.
Watch the practice report tomorrow.
Yeah.
If he practices Friday, he's playing. That's generally the way. Full practice, not limited. If he's limited tomorrow, he may not play.
Unless it's Max Crosby, because he's probably going to play.
Yeah. All right. Anything else? Because I've got mailbag questions.
Yeah, let's go to the mailbag.
All right. From Larry Wood. Should I sit Jefferson and start Scary Terry or Godwin? Not his doing, just piss poor quarterback play, but still, he only got 4 stinking points last week. So last week, I said Jefferson. In fact, on our Sunday show with Scott the King Engel and Tipp, we do these question and answer spaces. And Scott and I got into it because he said, you're overthinking. And I said, no, I'm not. He's just not performing right now. That said, not this week. Okay? I'm not sitting him this week because J.J. McCarthy cleared concussion protocol. He'll be back. It's not a rookie quarterback going on the road against the Seahawks defense. All right? They're playing the Commanders. Commanders suck. Seriously, in pass defense, I think they've given up the most passing touchdowns of any team is the Commanders. I think they're giving up just under 2 per game. So, I would play matchups, and I'm not starting Jefferson automatically, but I can't put Scary Terry in this week because it's the first week after, and that Minnesota defense is decent. I'm not sitting Jefferson over Godwin ever. So I play Jefferson this week. Let's go to you, Rick.
Yeah, I actually would play the J-Jets. I mean, he's, he will, I understand the pain, the questions coming in with, I have Jefferson as well. But I say you still have to go with them. The other 2 guys haven't done anything to make you want to sit down Jefferson. So, and hopefully J.J. McCarthy has been watching a lot of Jefferson highlight film, and hopefully he has a better game this week.
Mace?
I don't know. Jaden Daniels, like you said, is practicing. So that's kind of awesome, but I still don't trust it. I would go with Jefferson. I would feel really dumb if J.J. McCarthy did come back and kind of make it work. And I feel like if he is going to make it work with the frustration verbally, emotionally, with the media that Jed has had in recent weeks, it's really tough. And they're really going to want to keep him around and give him a future vision. So I think this week, in order to beat that team, it's going to be the Vikings secondary has to really lock it down and contain Daniels, whatever way Brian Flores does his thing. So, I'm just going to go ahead and say go Jetta one more week and weigh the storm, man.
It'd be nice if the coaches would give JJ 30 pass attempts instead of 18. But, Chris, what do you think?
Well, I mean, it's week 14. You're either in your playoff crunch or you might even be in the first week of your playoffs, depending on your league size. You don't want to lose with Jefferson on your bench if he shows up and actually is half of his normal Jefferson. You'd feel much worse, doing that than starting Jefferson and having Terry McLaurin going off. You go, whatever. We were just having this discussion. Do I sit I'm on Ross St. Brown tonight, Gimpy, when I have Michael Wilson, who's healthy, and Harrison might be out in a non-PPR? It's like, yeah, but you don't want to lose with Amon-Ra on your bench. You go with your best at crunch time, and you don't worry about the matchups. You play the guys that took you to the dance. So you got to go with Jefferson on them.
This next question, we're going to Chris first because of the shirt you're wearing, Chris. It's from the Emphatic Lion. All right?
Oh.
Kyle Pitts, Rondé Gadsden, or Darren Waller. Full PPR. Also, he has Ladd McConkey. He's thinking Pitts if London is out. What do you think?
Pitts if London is out, I think is a reasonable call. I mean, McConkey's tough. I mean, that's in a full PPR. It's tough not to play him over a tight end. Just about any tight end that's not named McBride, I would say. So I would say McConkey is probably something I'd lean toward, but of the tight ends, definitely Pitts if London is out.
Yeah, it's got to be a flex if you're swapping tight ends. And so
Right.
I'm assuming it's a flex. I'm not going McConkey. I normally would, but I want to see I want to see Herbert play with that hand first. I
Fair.
just don't trust it. So, and I'm not going with Pitts, even if London's out. I think Darren Waller's the play here. I think Darren Waller is the play here. And I like Gadsden, but again, Gadsden and McConkey are the same to me. You got to see the quarterback. Mace, I see you're agreeing with me, so tell us why.
I'm going to pull the whole 16-second thing that you just did and say that you pretty much just said everything that I could have said about that. Darren Waller just has that upside. He'll get 4 targets. 2 of them will be touchdowns. And you'll feel really good because if you have a tight end that gets you a touchdown, you're definitely winning probably that week for yourself.
Rick, do you agree?
I not only agree, but I'll underline the Gadsden. He was hot for a few games, but since returning from his knee injury, he's scored less than 5 fantasy points per game last 2 games. And he's now going up against the toughest defense against tight ends. So definitely, if I was thinking maybe Pitts, but I would definitely go with Waller. Hey, he was my sleeper too.
All right, so we're going to you first, Rick. From Adam Gilbert, Dallas Goedert versus the Chargers, or Zach Ertz versus the Vikings. Now, I'm going to you first because Zach Ertz was a sleeper pick for your replacement last week, and he nailed it.
And I'm going with Zach Ertz again. So since week 7, Goddard's only averaged 3.8 targets, 2.7 catches, 27 receiving yards per game. He hasn't had 50 yards in any of those contests, and top 30 only once. Ertz instead has had a monster game in week 13, recording 10 catches for 106, 13 targets against the Denver Broncos. Boy, I tell you, Jaden Daniels is back, and with 23 career games with Jaden Daniels, Ertz has had 11 touchdowns. Give me all the Ertz.
Let's go clockwise. Chris, you're next.
Can I do the 16-second thing too? Everything he said, spot on. I totally agree. Right on.
Mace?
Yeah, Ertz has a lot to prove. I think he did have the big week last week, as Rick previously said, but he had 2 crucial drops, especially that end zone. Kind of what I said with Chris Godwin, he's going to want to get that back. And with Jaden Daniels, if he does play, if he comes back, and even if it's just Mariota, there's some kind of connection there. So I would much rather go with the offense that's going to be losing at halftime and having to throw their way back than the dysfunction of whatever the Eagles are doing on offense.
Yeah, who knows what the Eagles do. I do know that over the last 3 games, Goddard has 6 catches on 11 targets, and he hasn't topped 30 yards in any of those games. Goddard is my bust at tight end from Snap, Crackle, Pop the last 2 weeks in a row. And last week, he nailed it for me, so thank you. From Kenny, it's Beard, but it's spelled B-E-A-R-Y. No, B-E-A-Y-R-D. Kenny Beard, and we're going to start with you, Mace. Would you start George Pickens or Bucky Irving in a flex spot?
I like Pickens. He's had a lot of good games in recent weeks, but I'm going to turn it over to Bucky Irving. It's his 2nd week back after his hiatus from injury / mental health, whatever he had going on there. Last week, he did get the bulk of the carries, and I think really this week is going to be the week that he really takes off for the Buccaneers. But playing the Saints, not the greatest defense on planet Earth, and this is really like a get-right game for that offense. They're going to want to keep the ball out of Baker's hands. Like I said earlier, I think he's going to have maybe 1 or 2 touchdowns passing, but I think the bulk of the idea is going to be to contain the ball and just kind of run it through. So I'm going to go Bucky.
I love Mace. He took this one seriously. I figured it's a troll question. I said, are you in a 6-team league? Maybe a 4-team league?
To stay professional, Greg. Come on, man.
Pickens is the 2nd-ranked wide receiver. He's going to be starting over any other wide receiver you have not named Jackson Smith and Jigba. He's going to be starting there. So, and Bucky Irving is going to be at least a flex play. You start them both. Both those guys are in your lineup. Rick?
My answer was both. I mean, I'm struggling with trying to find people like Tom Kennedy as my flex. And this guy has 2 top 5 in their position fees. So, yeah, both.
Chris?
Yeah, I mean, if you really have to start only one, I would go with Irving for the reasons May said, but they're probably both. I cannot imagine a team where you're not starting both.
All right, we got one from the crowd from Anita Bang. Algier, Hollywood Brown, Naylor, or Mike Gesicki in a half PPR. For me, I think Algier has the best chance of scoring, so I'm going with Tyler Algier. Rick?
I go with Algier, but I like as a just kind of like a wild take a shot at it. I like the idea of Naylor with the Vikings. If you're looking for a deep shot, that's it. But yeah, I think Algier is definitely going to get at least one touchdown, breaking more Bijan Robinson on their hearts.
Chris?
Yeah, Algier is just getting too many touches that he probably doesn't deserve as long as Bijan Robinson's alive to take him out of a flex lineup, especially against these guys who don't give me any reason to say that I trust them enough.
Mace?
I think Atlanta's trying to save Bijan for next year maybe or something. So I would go Algier. But I'm not sure if Naylor returns kicks. So if he does, then maybe look for that. But.
Okay. Last question from the mailbag is from Antonio Mendoza. Got to start 3. Cortland Sutton, Roma Dunze, DJ Moore, Alec Pierce, or Christian Watson?
I don't know. I don't know.
Oh, it's easy. Come on.
Oh, me first. Watson. Yeah. Watson. I put them in order: Watson, Pierce, Sutton, and then the 2 Chicago wide receivers.
Well, you heard me say that this is my I hate Chicago week. So I agreed with him. I said the other 3. You stay away from Adunze and Moore. What do you say, Chris?
Yeah, same. I don't like any of the Chicago guys this week, and I don't like them because of their inconsistency anyway. And outdoors at Lambeau, forget it.
All right, Mace?
I will agree with you guys, but I will give one little caveat. If Roma Dunze is not good to go, I know he's on the injury report, then maybe DJ Moore could be a spot start.
I actually like Luther Burden in that situation because he's playing in the slot and he's going to get the shorter crossing down.
I like the 2 tight ends if that actually.
And maybe Loveland or Komet, yeah.
Well, Loveland's a Michigan player. You got to play him. I mean,
I'm going to break your heart. I just dropped Loveland for to pick up Strange.
Well, Strange gets more consistent play, so
yeah,
it's not a bad choice. That's our show for tonight. I want to thank Mace and Chris for coming on. Chris, it's great to see you again, buddy. And of course, Iggy in the background. We hope you help us like, subscribe, see us every week, and take us out.